Locked up, running the city. How prisoners pull strings from Cellblocks. It was past midnight when prison guards at Florida State Prison noticed something strange. The lights in one of the high-security cells flickered for a few seconds, and then went dark. Moments later, a faint blue glow appeared again, but not from the prison lighting. It came from a hidden cell phone. Inside that cell sat Paul "Money Mike" Johnson, a man serving life for drug trafficking and murder. Yet even behind steel bars, Paul was no ordinary inmate. As the guards walked past his cell, he whispered into the phone, his voice calm but cold. "Handle it tonight. No mistakes." That message wasn't going to another inmate. It was for one of his men on the outside, a gang member who still followed his every order. Within hours, a man in Miami would be ambushed in a parking lot, a punishment for crossing Johnson's organization. The shocking part? The entire plan was made from inside a prison cell through a phone smuggled in for a few $100s. For years, Paul Johnson had built an empire that reached far beyond the prison walls. His cell was more like a small office than a punishment cell. Hidden phones, coded notebooks, and even cash stashed inside fake food containers helped him stay in charge. From behind bars, he ran drug shipments, assigned street-level bosses, and even handled money transfers using corrupt guards and outside couriers. Authorities tried for years to stop his operations. They blocked signals, ran cell searches, and transferred him from one prison to another. But every time they thought they'd cut off his communication, a new phone would appear. Someone always got paid. The system was broken, and Paul knew it. On the outside, his name still carried fear. Local shop owners whispered about how Money Mike could reach anyone, anywhere. His family, unaware of the full truth, received instructions disguised as business advice during prison visits. Every move was controlled with precision, as if he was still sitting in his Miami mansion, not a concrete cell. One day, a correctional officer named Torres began to suspect something. He noticed that Paul Johnson always seemed calm, even when there were lockdowns or shakedowns. It was as if he already knew what was coming. Torres decided to monitor him closely. Late one evening, Torres overheard Johnson quietly saying names, not inmate names, but street names from outside the prison. Curious, Torres ticked off the prison's intelligence unit. Within days, investigators began tracing unusual phone activity inside the prison. They discovered calls linked to violent incidents across Florida, drug deals, beatings, even a warehouse fire. And the calls all pointed back to one number. A number connected to Paul Johnson's prison cell.
When agents finally raided the cell, they found not one, but 4 hidden cell phones, all carefully wrapped in plastic and hidden behind a loose brick in the wall. Along with them were handwritten notes listing names, addresses, and coded amounts of money. It was undeniable proof that Johnson was still running his criminal empire. But the biggest shock came when one of the phones rang while they were holding it. The caller ID read Miami Crew. One of Johnson's men was calling to confirm another job. The agents froze, realizing they had just caught a live connection between a prison cell and a street-level operation. As the officers rushed to trace the call, Paul Johnson only smirked and leaned back on his bunk. "You'll never stop the business," he said. "I built it for moments like this." The line suddenly went dead, but what happened next would leave investigators stunned and show just how deep Johnson's control truly went. The call had gone silent, but the damage was already done. The prison's control room erupted in chaos as agents and guards scrambled to trace the signal. Phones rang, radios buzzed, and someone shouted, "Lock down C block, now!" Within seconds, heavy metal doors slammed shut, echoing through the corridor like gunfire. Paul "Money Mike" Johnson sat in his cell, watching the commotion through the narrow slot in his door. His expression never changed. He wasn't panicked, he was amused. It was as if he'd planned this moment, like a man watching his favorite scene play out in a movie he'd already seen. Investigators traced the call to a prepaid phone in Miami, but when local police arrived at the location, they found an empty warehouse, lights still on, doors wide open, and a single phone left on the floor, still warm from the last call. Someone had tipped Johnson's people off before the raid. "How is that possible?" one FBI agent muttered. "No one outside knew we were tracing it." Inside the prison, Officer Torres couldn't shake the feeling that the leak had come from within. He had seen it too many times: guards who took bribes, prison staff who looked the other way. Money moved faster than loyalty. The following morning, the warden ordered another full sweep of Johnson's cell. Every inch was searched, every item scanned. Yet somehow, the team found another hidden SIM card tucked inside the spine of a Bible. It was clear: Johnson was always one step ahead. When they questioned him, he simply smiled. "You can take my phones, but you can't take my reach." That line stuck with Torres. He began working quietly with the FBI task force assigned to the case. They discovered that Johnson's empire ran through coded communication channels that spread across multiple prisons. Inmates in other states acted as middlemen, passing messages through contraband phones, visitation codes, and even prison mail that appeared innocent at first glance. Each message looked like a letter to a loved one, but every third word held hidden meaning. When pieced together, the letters formed detailed instructions, delivery schedules, payment routes, and even hit orders. It was an entire network operating under the nose of the prison system. Outside, Johnson's loyal crew kept the flow of money strong. They laundered cash through fake construction companies, gambling websites, and prepaid cards sent through family members. One of his cousins handled weekly bank deposits, never realizing she was part of an illegal operation. By summer, law enforcement believed they finally had Johnson cornered. They set up a fake courier operation, an undercover sting meant to expose the full network. The plan was simple: intercept one of his coded messages, respond to it as if they were part of his crew, and follow the trail of money. For weeks, everything went smoothly. Agents disguised as couriers delivered fake packages, waiting to catch the next person in the chain. But on the fifth delivery, everything fell apart. The undercover van was ambushed in a parking lot outside Tampa. Two men with masks attacked, taking the fake package and disappearing before police backup arrived.
The timing was too perfect. Someone had warned Johnson's men again. Inside prison, when Torres entered Johnson's cell later that night, he found him sitting calmly, eyes fixed on the small barred window. Without turning, Johnson said, "You shouldn't have tried that, officer. You're playing a game you can't win." Torres froze. He hadn't told anyone about the sting, not even his wife. The realization hit him like ice. Johnson knew things no inmate should ever know. That night, Torres went home uneasy. Hours later, as he parked outside his house, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It read, "Next time, think twice before you touch my business. MM." Torres looked around the dark street, his heart racing. Someone had followed him home. Someone working for Johnson, from inside or outside, had eyes on him now. The next morning, the FBI moved Johnson to solitary confinement, hoping isolation would break his network. But when agents checked the security footage, they found something chilling. Just minutes before his transfer, a guard had slipped a folded paper through the food slot in Johnson's door. The message was short and handwritten. It read, "They know. Move fast." How did Johnson still have inside help? Who was the guard? And most importantly, what move was he planning from behind those bars? The answer would come within 48 hours, and it would shake the entire Florida prison system to its core. The next 48 hours felt like a storm waiting to hit. The Florida prison was under full lockdown. Every hallway echoed with footsteps and tension. Guards whispered about Money Mike Johnson, some out of fear, others in quiet admiration of how a man locked in a 6x8 cell could cause this much chaos. FBI agents set up surveillance in every corner. They monitored all outgoing mail, checked every phone signal, and even replaced several prison staff members suspected of leaking information. But still, Johnson sat calmly and solitary, tapping his fingers on the steel table as if counting down the seconds to something only he knew. At exactly 9:42 a.m. on the second day, an explosion ripped through a small warehouse outside Miami, one that investigators had been monitoring for weeks. The building went up in flames, destroying hundreds of files and pieces of evidence linked to Johnson's criminal empire. The timing was perfect. The explosion happened just as investigators in the prison were preparing to question him again. It was clear, the order had come from inside. Somehow, he'd sent a message out even while cut off from every known form of communication. "How is he still talking to them?" Torres shouted as the news flashed across the prison monitors. The agents had no answers. They searched his cell again, walls, floor, even the vent system. But when they lifted the metal table he'd always sat at, they discovered a small piece of plastic taped to the underside. It wasn't a phone. It was a Bluetooth transmitter, a tiny device connected to a wireless earpiece that had been hidden in his bedding. Johnson had been communicating with a guard who carried a second transmitter linked to the outside world. Every order, every coded message had passed through the walls of the prison using that connection. When confronted, the guard confessed everything. He'd been paid thousands of dollars through crypto wallets to smuggle the devices in, pass notes, and even coordinate deliveries. Johnson had promised to take care of his family financially, and for a desperate man in debt, that promise had been enough. As agents moved in to confiscate the final device, Johnson didn't resist. He stood, smiled, and said, "You can stop me today, but there's always another me waiting in another cell." His voice carried the kind of calm that sent chills down everyone in the room. Authorities transferred him to a federal supermax facility in Colorado, the kind designed to silence even the most powerful inmates. No phones, no visitors, no contact except through glass and guards who had been vetted twice. For the first time in years, Johnson's communication lines went completely dark. But outside, his name didn't fade. His network fractured into smaller cells, each one continuing the same work under new names and new leaders. Investigators traced dozens of phone calls and online messages back to people still loyal to him. The empire didn't die, it multiplied. Months later, Officer Torres received a letter at home. There was no return address, only a plain envelope marked in red ink. Inside was a single sentence written on lined paper. It read, "You can lock the man, but you can't lock the message." Torres stared at the words for a long time, realizing the truth. Johnson didn't need to speak to control his world. His legend, the fear, the loyalty, the system of coded communication was already stronger than the man himself. The story of Paul "Money Mike" Johnson became one of the most talked about cases in U.S. prison history. Law enforcement used it as a warning of how organized crime could thrive even under maximum security. But for those who had lived it, the guards, the agents, and the victims, it was a chilling reminder of one thing. Prison bars can hold a body, but they can't always contain power. And somewhere in a silent cell deep in Colorado, Paul Johnson leaned back on his bunk, eyes closed, a faint smile forming as he whispered the last words ever caught on a hidden mic. "The city still runs, just fine."